Hello everyone and welcome to another Let's Build video. So this is my 1994 Toyota pickup. There's really nothing excited about this truck, but the main part that I did want to show you guys is rebuilding the entire motor, or to the point where you basically almost rebuild the entire thing. I know it's very intimidating for a lot of people, but it really isn't. Once you know how to take everything apart, put everything back together, you have the right tools and the right guidance, everything becomes a lot simpler. So this is what I want to show you guys. I've been working on a lot of engines and a lot of cars, same with Freddie, and he's the one that helps me with a lot of these things whenever I need help. So the main thing is basically taking everything apart. So you need to take out vacuum lines, coolant lines, fuel lines, drain everything out, the coolant, the oil. If you have a power steering, for example, some of these came with power steering, maybe you don't have to necessarily drain that out, but it does help that things are out of the way. Just when you do pull out the motor, everything's a lot easier. If you do have AC, you can move it to the side most of the time. Other times you have to remove the AC compressor. I would suggest going to wherever you go change oil or transmission fluid or anything like that, like for example Jiffy Lube. We have a handful of them here locally. They will drain out your AC system if you do plan on taking it out. I wouldn't really recommend you or suggest you that you just start unbolting everything, because it will spray a bunch of stuff that you do not want to get on yourself, or get it in your lungs. That's very nasty stuff. But anyways, we take out everything. One of the things that I do suggest is that taking pictures of everything. So taking pictures of the entire engine bay, all those little tiny details, like where all the vacuum lines go, and where just how the harness is running, for example, because the harness most of the time will have to also come out. So taking pictures of everything will save you in the long run, just in case you don't come back the next day. You come back to it maybe like a few weeks later, because you are going to pull this out, take the whole engine apart, and then put it back in. It may be a few days, a few weeks, maybe a few months, depending on how much time you guys have. So taking pictures definitely will save you in the long run. Other than that, putting everything in baggies, Ziploc bags, will definitely help a lot. And then just labeling them, like these are all the valve cover bolts, this is the bolts for the hood, this is the bolts for the transmission, this is the bolts for and so on. So that will definitely save you a lot of headache. Instead of just, I've seen people throw them in like a bucket or like a box, or just laying them on the ground. That's great, and if it works for you, good. That would never really work for me because I like to be organized, but I've seen other people do this and it works just fine. But this is just my preference that has kept me very organized in the long run. Just in case for whatever reason a product does drag out for a few weeks, this would be perfect, because I wouldn't lose any bolts and I would know where every bolt goes. So what I'm showing you guys here is basically trying to get the engine ready to get pulled out. I pulled this thing out with the transmission, and I found it to be the easiest way to do it, instead of unbolting transmission and then unmounting it, sliding it out, and then pulling out the engine. I found that it's way easier to pull it all together. Always remember to also take out the drive shaft before. You don't want to pull that out. But that's probably my easiest way, and the easiest way in my experience for almost any application. At least I worked with a lot of Nissans, Toyotas, and Honda, and swapping those out. So for the Japanese versions, this is probably the simplest thing to do. I would assume that it would be same thing for almost all manufacturers. I haven't really worked on, for example, Mercedes-Benz or Range Rover, so I wouldn't really know how that would be. We didn't really come across any issues, luckily. Sometimes it would be, for example, broken bolts or stripped out threads, or just anything weird. Or sometimes you just forget to take out the reservoir and you smash the engine against the reservoir and it breaks. Things didn't really break, things didn't really bend, which was great. That's always a success, but that usually always happens if you have the right tools and the right, procedure to pull things out. We just did it how we usually always do it. Strap the whole thing up, pull the whole thing out, and just kind of go with it. Yeah, we forget here and there little things like ground wires sometimes, or a vacuum line that is stuck, or even the throttle body cable that sometimes gets, attached to the throttle body at the moment we try to pull it out. So there's little tiny things that is always going to get on the way, and you always have to like, oh, hold on, and adjust and take them out. That's fine. That always happens. But just remember to take everything out and do everything slow. If you try to yank this whole thing quick, you're going to break something, or bend something that you shouldn't do. Or just scratch up the engine bay. If this was a customer's car, I would not be happy if my engine bay got all scratched up because they couldn't pull out the engine. That's just me. But, you could prevent a lot of these things if you go nice and slow and you have the proper equipment. If things go wrong, things fail, things break and whatever, which sometimes does happen, don't even try to save it. Save yourself. Get out of the way. Let the thing drop. If it breaks, it could be replaced. If you get hurt, that could be a few $1,000s at the hospital or just a hospital trip, which are not cheap. So I would highly recommend you just get out of the way. You could always replace the engine. Yeah, it's going to suck, but at least you're going to be in good health. So we finally pulled out the motor or the engine, the whole assembly, and we separated the transmission because we weren't really going to use the transmission initially. What was bad, it was the engine. What we found out is that, which I'll show a bit later, was that there was a mixture of oil and coolant, and when those mix, it gets really like milky, really thick like chocolate milk, which I'll show you guys soon. So my assumption was that maybe it was a head gasket, which a lot of these 4-cylinders have, because that's kind of like the weakest point long term, is a head gasket going out, mixing the oil and the coolant, and then making the oil look all milky. Same with like the coolant. Once you open up the radiator, you'll see the same symptoms in there. So my assumption was that it was actually a head gasket. So I was like, okay, let's pull this thing out, pull it out with the tranny, make sure the tranny's all good, inspected, which it was pretty good. And get all new parts, get all new gaskets, get a new clutch if it does need a new clutch, which we ended up getting one anyways because it was already all apart, and these parts are actually very affordable. So we took the whole thing apart and just replaced what needed to get replaced or what will be replaced soon. So we just wanted to do a little bit of preventive maintenance. Once we pulled out the whole engine, we left the tranny behind with the truck. We put the engine, the 22RE, in the back of Freddy's truck. We completely forgot to take the cherry picker. That's at least what we call it. It's actually the engine crane. So we could move it out of the bed and into the garage. But since we didn't have it, we completely forgot. So we just started disassembling it in the bed, which it's all right. Not ideal, but we got the job done. So we started taking apart things. We were going to separate it because it was actually kind of heavy and we didn't want to throw out our backs. We didn't want to do anything like that. So I was like, let's just take the whole thing apart. Let's take out the intake manifold, the exhaust. Let's break apart the head, and then we'll just move it into my garage, into my workstation, just in separate pieces. I was going to take it apart anyways, so why not? So he's like, okay, great. So we started taking it apart in Freddy's truck, basically. And everything was going great except one minor issue. Alright, so we took off everything, and this is how the head looks.
Fucked up shit.
Not too bad. It could have been worse. Could have been way worse. Doesn't look too bad. I've seen a lot worse, but that milkiness in there.
Milkshake.
Yeah, seriously. That's pretty bad.
Ready?
Yeah. For whatever reason, these head bolts, they just now want to come out. I have no idea why, but they were just being a pain. And it happens. this made me believe that the engine was overheated, and most of the time when it does overheat, it just goes straight to the head, and it kind of seizes the head. It warps the head a little bit, so then the head gasket can't really seal since the head is warped. This is a aluminum head with a cast iron block. These blocks are known to be almost bulletproof, invincible. This is one of the legendary blocks that a lot of people talk about, and that's what I hear from a lot of people. The heads is usually what kind of goes to crap, if I were to say. And I guess that's kind of like the weakest point from this whole engine. Other than that, if you keep it maintenance properly, it's gonna run for a very long time. And I've seen people and heard people say that if you take care of them, these engines run for a very long time, so it made me to believe that it was a bit overheated. These head bolts didn't want to come out, so we took extra measures. We hit it with an impact gun. We tried pulling it. We used pliers. We used a hammer, until I finally had this idea. So we finally got the head all taken apart. We had to use that, and it does happen here and there. This is kind of what you get with an engine that that is gonna need some work. So be prepared with anything. Trust me, I've seen a lot of things. This is definitely like almost a unique situation, but at the same time it really isn't. This may have happened to somebody else, may have not, but I wouldn't be surprised if other people are talking about this and having the same problem too, that the head bolt doesn't want to come off, so you chop it off. Big deal. You gotta chop it off. But everything came out fine. We didn't really break anything. Nothing was like the threads, everything looked fine. The block looked fine, so everything looked great. The only thing I did is take everything apart, have kind of like almost a bare block, the short block. I took out the flywheel, the clutch assembly, and I put it on my engine stand. After that, I started taking apart the timing cover, the timing chain, the sprockets, the oil pump, the water pump. I knew that was already even though it may have just been replaced, maybe not, but I wanted to do a little bit of preventive maintenance, so I replaced the whole thing. I bought all new parts, so they were already on the way. I bought a whole engine gasket kit. I bought all timing chain components, water pump, oil pump, head gasket, all new gaskets, new clutch, new flywheel was coming in. And I was just getting ready for the whole entire rebuild, to put everything together. So I wasn't really going to do anything to the block. I was just going to clean it all up, make it look all nice and pretty. And because it looked actually very well, the cylinder walls looked great. It didn't really look like it had any cooling inside. It just looked like a regular carbon. So I'm just going to clean those pistons, kind of wipe down those walls, and clean the deck. And hopefully it's not too warped, which actually it really wasn't. So that's basically it. Look out for the next video, kind of taking apart the whole thing. Or actually, I think my next video is all the parts that do show up. So look out for that. I think it's kind of exciting, because I'm always excited to look at new parts and open new things, but that's just me. New parts always excite me, especially when that UPS or FedEx or whoever drops off parts shows up, and I was like, those are my parts. Come on, everybody's excited about that. But so follow our journey. It's me and Freddie. We are Let's Build, and we'll see you on the next one.